we had talked about showing depth in a piece of artwork and looked at some Grant Wood art. So I want to just show you some of the drawings that we're going to be doing and talk about foreground, middle ground, and background. So on this first one here, the foreground is this first hill right here. So the tree, the bush, part of the road, this tractor, and this windmill are definitely in the foreground. Notice the windmill takes up the entire paper. Because it's so close to us, it's so big. Now windmills are quite big anyway too, and look how big this tree is. And then the middle ground, you see how this tree gets a little bit smaller. So these two hills would be the middle ground, and then the background back here, everything is pretty small for that. Now, if we were to take all objects out and just have the hills, this is what the hills look like. So we have the foreground, these two would be the middle ground, and this back one is the background. You can do the foreground, middle ground, and background many different ways. So here's just a slightly different one. So if you look at this one, the foreground isn't much. It's just this lower area here with this tree. The middle ground would be these two hills of the bridge that goes across. And then the background are these two hills back in here. So this, if it was just written, drawn out, with just the hills, it would look like this. Foreground, middle ground, background. This one's not done coloring yet, but this one has the same look as that first one, where you have the foreground, middle ground are two hills that kind of overlap, and then a background. So it looks like this. And then the very last one, it's again not finished, but this one just has three hills. So foreground, middle ground, background, and it looks something like this. So on your paper, what I want you to do is I want you to draw just 3 lines. You're not going to label them, and of course your paper is much larger than this, but you're just going to do 3 lines. I'm going to have whatever you want. Foreground is going to be right here. I'm going to have my middle ground like this. It's kind of going to be like this one. And then my background here. So you're going to have 3 rows. So go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to show you what not to do though. That was what my to do is. You don't want crazy hills. We live in Iowa. We have hills. We do not have mountains. You do not want to draw 3 lines like this. That's going to cause you a lot of problems when we get further. So this would not be good. We want rolling hills, just slight hills. So go ahead and do that.
Now we're going to add objects and trees. So your goal is to have 20 trees and 10 objects. And you might think that 20 trees is a lot. But if you look, even just right here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, if you count this one, 11, just in this little area. So, and they're broccoli trees. So it's not as hard as I think it sounds, but we're going to do that today. So we're going to start with a tree. So I have 2. I'm going to use this one for an example of what not to do. So we'll do that in a minute. But the first one, you want to have 1 tree at least in the foreground, and it's going to be quite large. So you can see this is my foreground tree. It takes up at least half the paper. It could be even more. If you look at this windmill, it goes from almost the bottom of the page all the way off the top of the page. So let's say I'm going to put a tree over here. I'm going to take and I'm going to draw, and I can add the bottom if I want. And then I'm going to add the bubbles to the top like this. If I want to put a little V in there, I can. Now, when the tree overlaps the ground behind, you can erase those lines if you would like. You'll have to do it sometime. Do you have to do it right this second? No. And that is shaking my camera. I might not do that anymore. So you will erase those lines. So that would be our foreground tree. Now, for the middle ground tree, I'm going to draw one on my, maybe not so good. So when you're drawing a tree, if I want to draw one right here, I don't follow the curve of this. I don't want to do a tree. Some trees grow like that, but most grow straight up and down. So even if it's on the curve, it will still go straight up. Not everything has to be on the curve. Let's say I want to do a tree right here. Middle ground tree will be medium sized. And I could erase that line and that line. I don't want to make my camera go crazy, so I'm not going to do that. Then background tree. If I want to have a background tree, let's say right here, I might have it be this size. So you're going to make 20 trees. Then we're going to do objects. So let's say I want to do a sheep. He's hanging down by the tree. He's close to us. Remember, if it is close to us, it's like my hand. Look how big that is. Farther away, it looks smaller. So the sheep here, I'm going to think the tree, the sheep might be about this big. I still do those little bubble things if I'm doing a sheep. That's just how I like to draw a sheep. That one has kind of a crazy nose. Okay, and I could erase the lines here. He's kind of ducking down a little bit. Here's my sheep. Now, if I was to draw a sheep on this one, okay, so we're gonna do about the same size. There's a sheep, he's really fluffy. Now, if over here, I'm gonna draw a barn, does this work? No, it does not work. If this sheep is gonna get in this barn, here's my door in the barn. Can he fit in? No, he's almost a monster sheep. Now, if this barn was back here, it would be okay. So if I have, and I wanna make a barn in my background, let's say back here, he could be a small barn because he's so far back in the distance. That is perfectly okay. Maybe I have that little, there's a barn. Maybe I put a little silo there too. And that would be proper spacing. Now, I don't want to do a sheep that's super huge back here either. So a sheep could get smaller. Now, another thing is a road. I like to add a road, or it could be even a stream. But you see how that goes all the way back, and it might actually goes into that barn. So here we have the interesting one. You don't want to do a road that just 2 lines going straight up the page. That is not what a road looks like when it goes back in the distance. They go more in like this. And it does not go into the sky. That is a little weird. So here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna start, and you could do your road wherever you want. I have trees kind of in the way. I'm gonna start drawing a road, let's say right here. The sheep's hanging out by the road. So it's gonna go back behind the hill, and maybe it comes back and it starts going down this direction. See, it's getting skinnier. And then maybe it gets really skinny as it goes back here, and it looks like it goes back into the distance like that. So you're gonna do 20 trees, 10 objects. Have fun.
Once you have your 20 trees and 10 or more objects done in pencil, now you're going to take your Sharpie marker and you're going to outline everything. So wherever there's a pencil line, you need to add the Sharpie. We're going to do this so we can paint over the top of it and color and still see our lines. So you'll go ahead and do this to every pencil line. Have fun. Now it's time to talk about color. So for this assignment, you are going to color all of your objects and trees with crayon. So like this tree, I'm in the process of coloring, and it doesn't have to be, it's fall right now, so these can be fall colors. But you're gonna color the objects. Do not color the grass or the sky, just your objects and your trees. So you're going to color with crayon, and this is going to become a crayon resist. So crayons are made out of what? Does anyone know? Wax is the answer. And wax will resist paint or water on top of it. So I have 2 trees here. One I colored lightly. If I feel it, I really can't feel the wax. This one I pressed pretty hard. They're both well colored, but this one I can definitely feel the wax, and the wax is going to resist the paint. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to use my watercolor, and I'm going to start with the sky, and I have blue here, or for watercolor. This will be the next lesson too, but I'm just showing you why we have to color heavy. So I'm going to take and I'm going to color this, paint this tree with the blue. Paint the whole sky, so I'm going to paint this one too. Get some more paint. And if you look, when it's on this tree, it's starting to kind of bubble up. So this is where I can take a paper towel, and I could do it here too, and pat off where the crayon is. Now, which tree looks better? I know there's a kind of a glare on it, but which tree looks better? Definitely this one. So that is why when you're using your crayons, press hard, try to cover all white spots. Have fun. Now it's time to paint. So make one last check and make sure you have used crayon on all the objects and trees. Now, does it look like I forgot anything? There are a few things that I did with white crayon. White crayon works really well. It's one of the only chances we get to use the white crayon, but it's hard to tell if you missed a spot. So we'll see how I did. Now, this first foreground is already painted, and that was done with just a plain green. Now, I could make this a slightly darker green. If I want to do that, I add less water and more paint. But I could also make this with a mixed color. And I'm going to mix green and yellow together to get a different color. Otherwise, the hills are going to blend in together. So first, I'm going to take yellow paint, and I'm going to put it in my mixing area. And since I'm just using yellow, I don't have to clean my brush. I do need more water. I'm going to get a big old chunk because I don't want to run out halfway through. Once I think I have enough, then I'm going to add some green to it. Now green, I don't want to touch the yellow paint, so I'm going to put the green here. And then when I think I have enough, ooh, I got a little green and yellow. I will have to get that cleaned up. When I have enough, I swish it around, and I think I need a little more yellow. So this time I'm going to take this, and I can either put it right beside, and it's mixing on its own. Okay, let's mix that together. Add just a little more water to it to make it go further. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to paint this. Now the cool thing is with Crayon Resist, you don't have to paint around things. I'm going to paint right over my house, right over the tree, right over the road. The only thing I have to be careful of is I want to get this line. You can see how this is a slightly different color than below. So I'm going to keep painting that until I get the whole thing painted. So we're going to pretend like I have the whole thing painted. Then I would mix another color to get here, and then my third one for the sky. Now my sky is at night, so I would want to do like a dark blue, or I could do a purple, or I could even do a black for that. So you're going to paint each layer slightly different. The entire piece of paper gets painted. And remember, if you do have an area where the paint starts to dot up, you can always take a paper towel and you can kind of pat that area off if you would like. If it dries on there, you can get this paper towel just a little bit wet, and then you can do the same thing. So have fun painting. Now I'm done watercoloring, so we have our Farmscape, but we're going to add one more thing. It has to do with the book, The Barn Dance. So in The Barn Dance, if you remember, we had a scarecrow. So the very last thing we're going to do is add a scarecrow. And the scarecrow is going to be in the foreground, which means the scarecrow's feet are going to touch the bottom of the paper, and he's going to be quite large because he's so close to the front. So this would be an example. So you can see the scarecrow here. He takes up more than half of the height of the paper because he's in the foreground. And your scarecrow can look however you want, and we had slides we looked at for that. But you're going to get a slip of paper. The head or the hat should touch the top, and the feet or the pole should touch the bottom. And then you're just going to draw it on here however you want. You could, have a pumpkin head. I'm going to have mine have kind of a hat, maybe like a cowboy hat, nose, stitching for the mouth. Whatever you would want would be okay for this. And you can have whatever kind of outfit you want on yours too. Sometimes scarecrows, I'm going to draw a little bit of straw coming out here. Sometimes scarecrows have arms that come out and then down. And I'm going to have some, mine's not going to have hands, it's just going to have some straw coming out. And then his shirt, hopefully I have room over here. It's a little shorter. I can add some more of that in later. Mine's just going to have pants. Mine's going to look like he's got, which farmers would use just old clothes for this. So maybe I have a shirt that buttons, but there might be a patch on some places, maybe a patch on his knee. And again, I could have straw coming out the bottom. Maybe there's that pole that goes into the ground here, and then I would take markers, I would color it in, cut it out, and then when you're done, you would have a project like this. Remember, his feet need to be glued somewhere on the bottom, and it's okay, he's going to overlap some things, but that just gives the picture more depth, so that is okay. Have fun.